Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, The Monarch Witch. I'm Tanisha, and the purpose of this channel is to channel the collective consciousness and bring forward different perspectives that can help us open our minds to different beliefs and to accepting each other's differences, and can help us sort of get closer and closer to the truth of who we are, what's our purpose, what are we doing here. But the main thing is just to help accept each other and love each other for who we are and the differences in each other. Specifically as well from my perspective and my point of view of being a practicing witch, trying to also help the collective understand not just the negative aspect of witchcraft, but also the positive, and of what witches truly are and are truly meant to be, which is healers on this planet. I am a little bit emotional for today's video because I've done quite a few videos about seeing testimonies of New Age or witchcraft conversion to Jesus Christ or to religion, and I've done a few videos on that and what I believe is happening there. And I guess this is my testimony from the other perspective of being a practicing witch, and that being who I am, who I was born as, and being condemned for that. So this video is about the spreading of hatred towards all witches from religion that's happening at the moment, and why that's actually really harmful to be doing. So I'm going to help you understand how it's harmful on not just an individual level for people, but also on a worldwide scale. And so the worldwide scale is quite obvious, because we only have to look at history to see what spreading the hatred of witches did. And that was led to mass fear, mass hysteria, and unaliving of people. And I am trying to hold it together for this video, so I'm really sorry if I'm very emotional, but I'm not just feeling this for myself. I'm feeling this for all witches around the world, and for the witches that have been and suffered and endured and were condemned. So this video itself that I was called to do is also like a mass healing and emotional release of all this trauma and this witch wound that has happened as a result of this. So I've explained how it's harmful on a mass scale, and so now I want to explain how it's harmful on an individual level. So it's harmful on an individual level because it makes witches feel shame, fear, they feel like they're being hated for being who they are. And this can in turn lead to them suppressing who they are, which I've been on the other, which I have been through myself. When I was a little girl, I was born loving everything magical, loving nature, loving animals. I would get mad at anybody who would step on an ant. I would put offerings out to fairies. It's who I was, okay? Because the most real expression of who you are is when you go back to a childhood. And Jesus Christ himself said to know the kingdom of heaven is to be like a child. Okay, and I was happy and I felt so much love for people. I created spells and potions and, you know, things like that, but my intention was never to harm. My intention was always love. I even had a test growing up where I had some older girls that I'd told about being bullied try and get me to do harmful witchcraft on her. And I refused to do that because my soul knew that was wrong. But my soul also knows that a big part of who I am is a practicing witch. But the true version of what a witch is a healer. I want you to just to grasp the amount of harm that this does to someone individually. I want you to imagine that this is who you were born as at a soul level, and you cannot be anything else because it is your soul's calling. And imagine that you suppressed that for years, and that you lived with the fear for years that you were going to go to hell and be eternally tortured because of who you are, when you don't actually even have a choice in who you are at a soul level. That's, I personally believe, you're born with gifts from God. You're born as, you know, created in his image. As it says, you were created perfectly how he intended you to be. But you completely suppress yourself because you believe that that person deserves hell and is not worthy of his love. And in completely suppressing yourself, you suffer the worst depression of your life. And sometimes you even thought about taking your own life because you're that ashamed to be who you really are, and that ashamed of who you really are. And some of you might say that's because you're practicing witchcraft that you're feeling that way. But I want you to remember that this was happening because I was suppressing who I really was. I wasn't practicing witchcraft at all during this depression, during this living hell. Now, it's not the only reason that I went through depression. There were many others, but it was a contributing factor. And so just for a second, think to yourself that spreading fear and hatred towards all witches can then lead to them hating themselves, suppressing themselves. going through pain and torture their whole life. And in this fear of going to hell and this shame for who you are actually living in hell. Because you can't be who you were put here to be. And you hate yourself. And it's a constant battle to love yourself, but you don't really understand why. Because this doesn't happen consciously, this happens subconsciously. Because of the energy of the hatred towards who you are and the judgment and the energy that carried over from past lives or history of what was done to you because of who you were. Now I want you to think that after all this suppression and this living hell that you were going through, that God, him and herself, because I believe as God as a divine mother and father, helped you realize what was missing, helped you start remembering who you really were. And so you start becoming that little girl again. And you practice witchcraft again, and you believe in magic again. And it makes you so happy, and you feel so free to finally be able to be who you were born to be. But even though you were feeling this freedom and this happiness within yourself, there is a constant battle within yourself, within your spirit, every day. Because even though you're happy and you're free within yourself, the outside world is still telling you that it's not okay. Is still telling you that you deserve to be tortured in hell. That you should feel shame for who you are. That you shouldn't be who you are. That God doesn't love who you are. That you are an abomination for who you are. You're so happy and you're so free, but you can't be truly happy and free being who you are because there is so much hatred towards who you are. So much hatred when you've never even done anything to bring on this hatred. When all you've wanted to do is heal, protect, and love people with your craft. And you will live a life of eternal torture within yourself. Because you want to feel that acceptance and love for who you are. And you're not feeling it. Now, I, as a lot of you know, have read the Bible. Not all of it, but I've read a lot of it and tried to understand the context behind it and ask questions. You know, I don't want to just read it and be like, that's how it is. I want to know it deeply. I want to understand who Christ was deeply. And one thing that I noticed was that he never condemned witches. The Bible does. The God Yahweh does. But we're also told that the only way to the Father is through Christ, and he never did. In fact, I would argue that he was a witch and a healer himself. So this is the harm in spreading fear and hatred towards all witches. Maybe there are some that use it to harm innocent people, but majority of us are not that. Majority of us want to heal and protect others, ourselves and others. But even though we're not that, we're made to feel like we are that. and we're treated just as badly as a witch who would harm a child, who would harm innocent people. So now I want to share with you the other side of the equation. And the other side of the equation is, I just shared with you how it's harmful to spread fear and hatred towards all witches. And I want to share with you what a difference it can make when you spread love towards a witch instead, from my own experiences. So this is obviously something that I need to heal within myself, that I acknowledge. But I don't just think it's something I need to heal. I think in the world, on a mass scale, the rift and the hatred that's being caused between witches and the certain religions that condemned them needs to be healed, because it didn't lead to anything good, and it's not going to lead to anything good. So I'll give you two experiences. One experience was when two Christian men came to my door, and at this point I'm very honest about who I am, and they wanted to preach the Bible to me, get me to follow religion, and I said, I'm a practicing witch, my beliefs and yours don't align, but thank you for your time, but I don't want to waste your time or mine. I'm not going to be going over to religion. And these men, and I even said to them as well, that I don't believe in religion, but I do believe in Christ, because that's the truth. I believe in Christ. I believe in his teaching of love God, love your neighbors as you love yourself. Love above everything else. That's the part I believe in Christ with. And I explained that to them, and they sort of said how, they feel the same. And what really surprised me is they weren't pushy, and they weren't pushy, and they weren't judgmental when I said that I was a practicing witch. And they even ended up giving me the New Testament Bible for free. They just handed it to me and said, here, you might like to read this. And like I said, I do read the Bible because I do believe in Christ's message. And the New Testament, I've noticed, is more about his message than the old God Yahweh's message. But if you wanted to bring witches over to religion, or you wanted them to accept Christ, that would be a much better way of doing so, of doing it with love, like these two men did, because it actually did help me to want to, read the New Testament and understand Christ on a deeper level as well. I don't just take it for what we're told he is, because we have a lot of missing context, a lot of missing parts of his life. I want to know who he truly was. And another example is in my theatre group. I met a woman, and I'd always had experience of Christians saying, I'll pray for you, in a really condescending, nasty, like, I'll pray for you because I'm better than you type manner. I noticed when this woman said, I'm going to pray for you, she said it with love. And that created such a difference. And we also sat and talked about our beliefs. And I told her about my channel, and she was open to even looking at my channel, and I was open to hearing about her beliefs. I told her that I don't like the God Yahweh. You know, the Old Testament God I think is evil, but I do believe in Christ's teachings, and I believe he was teaching about a different God. Now, her belief was that Yahweh, or the Old Testament God, was just showing how he doesn't accept evil, or it was trying to show how he doesn't accept any evil at all. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I was open to hearing that and understanding that's her belief, as she was with me. And that love is how to heal this rift between witches and, you know, certain religions. And so obviously that doesn't mean a witch has to convert to religion or Christianity, or that a Christian or person of that religion has to convert to witchcraft. It's just about accepting each other for who each other is, even if you don't necessarily agree with the way, you know, each other are living their lives, or the practices, or the beliefs. And by doing that, you actually already are both following Christ, because his most important teaching was the one of love. And by following him in this, I want you to just imagine what a more peaceful, beautiful, loving world that would create if no one had to feel guilt or shame or hatred for each other or themselves for just being who they are. And I'm not talking about if, you know, they were doing nasty things to people and harming innocent people all over the place. Obviously, you know, there is a place for guilt there. But I'm talking about for not being able to be anyone different, because this is who God, or the Divine Mother and Father, universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it, brought you into this world to be. So I want you to also understand that when I was talking about my journey and the hatred I felt and the shame, this did not come from God or the Divine Mother and Father, because the Divine Mother and Father was urging me in different ways by bringing it forward in people or things I would come across to follow this path. It was people saying it was wrong and people's hatred that was making me feel that way. And I believe it was also Christ and the Divine Mother and Father who brought people to me, who showed me love for who I was instead, and helped me realize that I need to heal this rift in myself and speak about it, and in doing so, hopefully heal this rift on a wider scale as well. Because the Divine Mother and Father in Christ was bringing in this experience of feeling loved for who I was instead, and it was like Christ was saying to me, you see, not everyone, you know, hates witches, or not everyone condemns you. Like, he was trying to show me that I was loved by people as well. Because I think he was even showing me that within myself there was maybe still some negativity and judgment towards religious people as well. Even though I did have Christians that were lovely, there just existed still this fear and judgment of people of this religion and Christians, that they were going to hate me. And so I believe Christ showed me that within myself that needed to be healed as well by showing me the experience of love instead. And so because of these experiences of, Christ bringing forward Christians to me and just being handed the New Testament, I started questioning, is he saying not to practice witchcraft? Is he calling me to religion? And so I really wanted to understand, why he was pulling me in this direction as well. And I didn't feel from him that he was ever saying not to practice witchcraft. But what I do feel from him is that he wants me to understand who he was on a deeper level. He wants us all to understand who he was on a deeper level. We can understand part of who he was by reading the Bibles, but there is a lot of context, there is a lot of his life missing. So it's like a mission to understand the entirety of who he was. Because I think the parts missing is what is also causing a lot of harm in this world as well. So the other thing that happened was when I was asking him this question about, practicing witchcraft and believing in him, should I be converting to religion, is it a sin, all of this sort of stuff, he led me to certain verses in the Bible that actually did answer that question. And so when I was asking this question and I just flipped to a random page, what it actually brought up was the part in where he is actually calling out religious leaders of that time for their hypocrisy, saying that they are presenting a clean, kind, good, perfect image on the outside, but meanwhile they're being greedy for people's money, they're sinful, and he just really was calling out the hypocrisy of religion. So it's funny that I'm asking this question and he leads me to this, and what that was telling me was that he is saying you don't have to be religious to believe in me, to believe in my message, to understand me, to do good works like I did. Nowhere did he say you have to be religious to believe in him. The other thing that happened was I was guided to all the verses in the Bible that speak about witchcraft being bad. And correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I haven't read the entire Bible, but from what I've seen, he himself never actually condemned witchcraft. It was the God Yahweh that condemned witchcraft, because Jesus Christ would always call himself the Son of Man or Christ, and all the verses that I found that were condemning witchcraft would say the Lord your God, which was always referring as to Yahweh usually. And the one that I found was thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, and there is arguments about what they even meant by witch, or that they could have meant only witches practicing evil witchcraft, and harming others with it. But it could have also meant poisoner. There was a lot behind that, but also it didn't come from Jesus Christ, it came from Yahweh. The other one was that I can't remember it, sorry, 100%, but it was about, don't go to mediums, spiritists, witches. I am the Lord your God, essentially. So I was saying, don't go to any of these people. And that again didn't come from Jesus Christ. And then you have to understand the context behind it, which was basically taking over land of people that believed in these things. And then you also look at the history of how the Bible was put together, and there was an agenda to keep people of the same religion, to make everyone believe that religion, to be able to control people easier as well. So what I'm just saying, what Christ has sort of led me to in this is to understand him deeper and realize that you don't have to be religious to follow him. You can be a witch and you can follow him. You know, you could probably even be a Satanist and follow him. I know that's, a lot of people are going to think that's blasphemous, but it's more about the works you do in the world. Are you doing good in the world? Are you loving others? And are you wanting to understand who he was, you know? I just think what he was saying is, he even said people will quote his name, people will say his name, but he will say to them, I did not know you. You did not know me, you know? And yeah, so I can't find anywhere where Jesus Christ himself condemns witches in the Bible, but I did find where he doesn't condemn but calls out religious leaders who are the ones who put the rules about witches there. So yeah, this has been my journey, and you know, I really want you to understand that the harm that spreading this fear and hate of witches is doing and has done in the past, how moving forward we can heal this hate instead by using Christ's message itself. And I guess to help you understand from my point of view and my perspective, that I believe you can be anyone and still follow and love Christ. And that all of us together have a lot more to do to understand who he truly was, because we only have parts of it there. Another thing that he said was the only way to the Father is through him. So the only way to the Father is through Christ. So why are we following Yahweh's teachings still, when Christ said the only way to the Father was through him? And what's interesting is he didn't say the only way to Yahweh is through me. And he said to the Father. You'll notice in the Old Testament, Yahweh does not really often refer to himself as the Father. It is the Lord your God that he usually refers to himself as. And so Christ is saying the only way to the Father is through him. Not the only way to the Lord your God is through him. Not the only way to Yahweh is through him. And so that's why I feel there's many people being called to go through Christ and understand who he truly was, because my belief is that he's leading us to the true Father, and by not going through him, we're susceptible to thinking that Yahweh is the true Father, when that's not the case, because the true Father, or you know, what I believe divine Mother and Father, is of unconditional love, not jealousy and possession, but love. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been an emotional one, so I, you know, hope that it helped you maybe release some emotions and do some healing, and have a lovely day or night wherever you are.